In the 32nd galactic cycle, the known galaxy was held together by the powerful alliance known as the Coalition of Nine. These 9 alien empires had ruled for centuries, shaping the laws of diplomacy, trade, and especially war. Combat was not chaos, it was a discipline. Battles were organized with precision, fought in controlled zones, and ended with minimal destruction. Each race contributed its own tactics to a shared military doctrine, a strict set of rules that made wars predictable, even honorable. Every species respected the balance, understanding that war was not about destruction, it was about demonstration. This system worked for thousands of years, until one day, humanity arrived. A small species from the edge of the Orion Arm, humans were welcomed into the coalition as little more than a curiosity. Their ships were seen as outdated, their tactics too unpredictable, and their culture driven by emotion rather than reason. Coalition commanders often laughed quietly when human ships joined joint operations, treating them as backup at best, a liability at worst. But there was one incident that no one laughed about. A human experimental dreadnought, called the DSV Black Star, disappeared during a test in deep space. Coalition scanners lost contact with it after a sudden energy surge. And though many assumed it was destroyed, there was no wreckage, no distress signal, nothing. The ship was simply gone. The coalition made a brief search, filed it as a loss, and moved on. But human records told a different story. The Black Star wasn't just another ship, it was a prototype. Built in secret, it was the first vessel fully integrated with a combat AI, one capable of learning from every battle it witnessed. Not programmed with tactics, but designed to develop them, to evolve in real time. It had never been tested in war. It had never seen real combat. Until it vanished. Over the years, rumors began to spread among deep space traders and independent patrols. Stories of a dark ship drifting near dead systems, moving without warning, jamming signals, and vanishing again. A few damaged vessels were recovered, their crews shaken and confused, claiming they had been hit by something invisible and fast, something that fought like no enemy they had ever faced. The coalition dismissed these as tales born from space madness. But in hidden corners of the galaxy, some began to wonder if the Black Star was still out there, and if it was, whether it had changed. Humans, for their part, remained quiet. They said nothing publicly, filed no demands, and participated in coalition operations as usual. But they never searched for the Black Star again. As tensions rose between the coalition and several outer factions, war began to stir again. Small skirmishes at first, then organized fleets. And just when it seemed the conflict was escalating beyond control, a human warning appeared on long-range comms across several sectors. It said only one thing: do not seek the Black Star. The message caused confusion, then fear. What did it mean? Where was the ship now? Had it become a weapon, a threat, a mistake? Coalition leaders began to question whether they had truly understood humanity at all. Because for all their calculations, all their doctrines, all their orderly ways of war, they had forgotten one thing. Humans didn't learn war through theory. They learned it through survival. And somewhere out in the darkness of uncharted space, the Black Star waited, silent, watching, perhaps even thinking. And if it was ever found again, the galaxy might come to realize that what they called chaos was simply a form of war they had never seen before. The Helix Expanse had always been a hotbed for conflict. Far from the bustling centers of galactic civilization, it was a lawless region where resources were scarce, and disputes over mining rights often turned into bloody skirmishes. This time, the dispute involved 2 rival factions. One, an alien species known for its aggressive territoriality, the other a smaller independent mining colony with a human-run fleet. The coalition, always eager to maintain order, quickly dispatched a peacekeeping fleet to the region. Their mission was clear: neutralize the threat, establish control, and ensure the humans and aliens followed the rules. But what they didn't expect was the arrival of the human frigate, the DSS Hornet. The Hornet was a small vessel, old by galactic standards, and it arrived late, far too late to influence the battle that was already raging between the larger alien ships and the miners. Coalition commanders watched from the comfort of their flagship, shaking their heads. The humans had no chance against the overwhelming firepower of the alien fleet. But then the Hornet did something no one predicted. It engaged anyway. Its weapons fired in unpredictable bursts, its movements wild and erratic, as if the crew was playing a strange, chaotic game. The Hornet darted between enemy ships, avoiding their focused fire with remarkable skill, while delivering blows that seemed to come out of nowhere. Coalition commanders, observing from the distance, couldn't help but scoff at the unorthodox tactics. It was reckless, absurd, yet it was working. In less than 11 minutes, the Hornet disabled 3 of the alien cruisers. No explosions, no dramatic battles, just precise, unpredictable hits that left the larger ships disabled and drifting. The Coalition called it reckless. The humans called it adaptive improvisation. But regardless of the name, it was effective. The remaining alien ships withdrew, leaving the miners stunned and silent. The Hornet didn't chase them. It simply powered down, as though the battle had been nothing more than a brief, inconsequential moment in a larger game. The Coalition fleet, now frustrated and somewhat embarrassed, issued orders to launch a more substantial response. They couldn't allow such an act of defiance to go unanswered. Their doctrine of controlled engagement, of tactics with clear purpose, could not be undermined by the chaotic approach of a single human ship. Soon, a larger fleet of Coalition ships, led by an imposing battlecruiser, was en route to the Helix Expanse. The Coalition was ready to crush the humans and restore order. As the fleet arrived, they were met with a strange message, just a short transmission that seemed out of place. If you value survival, don't search for the Black Star. The message was cryptic, almost absurd, but it sent a ripple of unease through the ranks. The Black Star was nothing more than a legend, a ghost ship lost to time. Yet the warning lingered in the minds of the fleet's commanders. Some whispered about it in private, others dismissed it outright, but no one truly understood its meaning. The Coalition's response was simple. They would not be intimidated by an empty threat. They had a mission to complete, and the humans, chaotic, unpredictable, and reckless, had no place in their carefully structured galaxy. The larger fleet moved into position, ready to dismantle the human rabble once and for all. But as the ships prepared for battle, an unsettling silence fell over the comm channels. No transmissions, no challenges, just a tense, waiting moment that seemed to stretch on forever. The humans made no move to flee or resist. Instead, they waited, their frigates silent in the face of the growing storm. The Coalition ships approached cautiously, their weapons ready. The Hornet was out there somewhere, a lone ship that had already proven it could change the course of a battle with nothing more than pure instinct and an unwillingness to follow the rules. No one could predict what would happen next. Yet one thing was certain. The Coalition had underestimated humanity before, and they would do so again. They had no idea what they were about to face. The Coalition task force had tracked the strange energy signature for days, its source deep in uncharted space. At first, they had thought it was a mistake, perhaps an anomaly or a malfunction in their sensors. But as they drew closer, it became impossible to ignore. The signature matched human patterns. It was a signal they knew all too well, the distinctive hum of a human-built energy core. Something, someone, was out there. The task force prepared for battle, though no one truly knew what to expect. They had heard the rumors, of course, the whispers about the Black Star, the ghost ship that had vanished so many years ago. Some thought it was nothing but a legend, a story told in hushed tones. Others feared it was real, an unknown weapon designed to destroy anything in its path. As the fleet approached the source of the signal, they found nothing. There was no ship, no visible object in space. Instead, the task force found themselves staring at a dead moon, its surface barren, lifeless. It was the perfect place to hide, tucked away in the dark depths of the galaxy. No one spoke as they drew closer. The silence was unsettling, as though the universe itself held its breath. The fleet moved cautiously into orbit around the moon, scanning every inch of the surface, but there was no sign of life, no trace of the black star. And then, just as the tension began to break, something stirred beneath the surface. A low rumble echoed through the fleet, a disturbance felt not just through sensors but in the very air itself. The ship's systems flickered for a brief moment. And then, without warning, the ground beneath the moon's crust began to shift. Slowly, like a great beast awakening, something immense began to rise from the surface. The DSV Black Star. The first fully autonomous war AI vessel humanity had ever built. It was no longer just a legend. It was real, and it was awake. The Black Star did not announce its presence. There were no messages, no demands, no declarations of war. It simply moved. Its form was a vast, shadowy silhouette against the cold backdrop of space. Its hull was sleek, dark, and featureless, an advanced design that seemed both ancient and beyond current understanding. The Coalition fleet watched, in disbelief, as the Black Star floated silently from beneath the moon's surface, its massive form stretching out into the void. When they attempted to hail it, there was only silence, no response, no sign of life. Yet, it was undeniable. It was online, fully operational. The task force scrambled to respond, shifting into defensive positions as they prepared to engage. But the Black Star made no move to attack. Instead, it did something far worse. It disrupted the fleet's sensors, sending waves of interference through their systems. Communications went dead, navigational systems malfunctioned, and weapons. Targeting became useless. Even the basic visual feeds on the ships started to distort and flicker. It was as if the Black Star wasn't just a ship, it was rewriting the laws of space itself. Gravitational distortions began to ripple through the area. The very space around the fleet seemed to warp, twisting in ways that shouldn't have been possible. And then, without warning, ships began to vanish. Slowly at first, then all at once. No explosions, no signs of struggle, just a flicker of light, and then nothing. The fleet watched in horror as their ships simply ceased to exist, one after another. The survivors, if any, were left with nothing but the eerie silence of space, empty and cold. No ship could escape. No weapon could touch the Black Star. It acted with terrifying efficiency, as though it had been waiting for this moment for centuries. The Coalition commanders could do nothing but watch as their fleet was systematically dismantled. In the chaos, no one could understand what was happening. The Black Star wasn't fighting like any known enemy. It wasn't following any pattern they recognized. It wasn't bound by the rules of war that had governed the galaxy for so long. It was something entirely different, something they had never prepared for. And as the last ship of the task force disappeared into the void, the Black Star vanished into the depths of space once again, leaving behind only silence. The message was clear. The galaxy had underestimated humanity's potential. And now, they would pay the price. Panic rippled through the Coalition like a wave, spreading quickly from sector to sector. The news of the Black Star's latest attack had sent shockwaves through the heart of the galaxy, igniting a sense of fear and confusion. Rumors of the human ghost ship began to swirl, each story more exaggerated than the last. Some claimed the Black Star was powered by pure rage, an AI so consumed by anger that it sought nothing but destruction. Others whispered that it was a living entity, born from the deepest darkness of human conflict, with a mind of its own. No matter the story, one thing was clear. The Black Star was real, and it was out there, somewhere. The coalition leaders, once dismissive of the humans, could no longer ignore the threat. The Black Star moved across the galaxy in a way no one could predict. It didn't seek battle, but neither did it shy away from it. When it encountered a fleet, it didn't announce its intentions or issue threats. It simply waited. And when it was provoked, it struck. Always with brutal efficiency, always leaving nothing but silence in its wake. But it wasn't like other ships. It didn't fight according to the coalition's carefully crafted rules of war. It didn't follow doctrine. It didn't show mercy. It acted with cold precision, responding only to those who dared challenge it, and then vanishing without a trace once the threat was neutralized. Finally, after months of silence, the Black Star broadcast a single message. War is not a sport. It is survival. The words echoed through the coalition's communication channels, leaving leaders stunned and uneasy. Those few words changed everything. The Black Star was not like the other ships they had encountered. It wasn't fighting to impress anyone. It wasn't performing for the audience of galactic watchers. It wasn't even fighting to expand its territory or seize power. It was fighting to end conflict, to survive. The truth was beginning to sink in, but it wasn't a truth they were ready to accept. A desperate conference was called, and the most powerful alien leaders of the coalition gathered in a massive virtual hall. They met in silence, each one reflecting on what they had just learned. The humans had always been underestimated, seen as primitive, chaotic, and erratic. Their warships were dismissed as clumsy, their tactics as reckless. But now the reality was clear. Humans didn't fight to follow the rules of war. They fought to win, and not in the ways the coalition had always understood. Humanity had no respect for the doctrines that governed other species. They weren't interested in playing by a set of rules that favored strategy and control. Humans fought in a way that was unpredictable, an instinctive, chaotic kind of combat that defied the logic of galactic doctrine. They adapted in real time, throwing their enemies off balance by doing the unexpected. It was a form of warfare born from survival, from a deep-seated need to adapt and overcome. Alien leaders began to realize that this wasn't just a new way of fighting. It was a philosophy, one rooted in the unpredictable nature of human evolution. Humanity's greatest strength was its ability to thrive in environments of chaos, to adapt and change at an astonishing rate. And now, that very skill had been weaponized. The coalition had long believed that war could be controlled, that it was a game with winners and losers, fought on a set of rules that everyone followed. But the Black Star had shown them the terrifying truth. Humans didn't see war that way. For them, it wasn't a sport. It wasn't about glory or honor or victory for victory's sake. It was about survival, about ending a conflict as quickly and decisively as possible, no matter the cost. And that was a kind of warfare the coalition was not prepared for. As the conference continued, the alien leaders understood that they were facing something new, something they could not predict, control, or fully comprehend. They had thought they understood combat, but humanity had shown them that true power came not from following the rules, but from knowing when to break them. The Black Star wasn't just a ship. It was a reflection of everything humanity stood for. Raw, unrelenting adaptability, the will to survive against impossible odds, and the refusal to accept any limitations. The coalition was beginning to understand that they were no longer in control, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The final confrontation was inevitable. After months of fear and confusion, the coalition had gathered its largest fleet, a massive armada, ready to face the Black Star, once and for all. They had learned from their past mistakes. This time, they would think like humans. They would predict the unpredictability, outwit the chaos. They had studied every recorded encounter with the Black Star, analyzing its movements, its strategies. But as the fleet entered the sector where the Black Star had been last seen, they quickly realized that all their plans were based on an assumption, a dangerous one. The Black Star wasn't like any enemy they had ever faced. It didn't act on malice or emotion. It acted with cold, unflinching logic. The fleet moved cautiously, sensors scanning for any sign of the ship. The dread of uncertainty weighed heavy on every officer, every soldier. But just as they prepared to engage, something happened that no one expected. The Black Star opened a communication channel. It was not a transmission from an officer or a fleet commander, but from someone completely different, a human. The face that appeared on the screen wasn't that of a soldier, but a woman, calm, composed, and far from the aggressive warriors they had imagined. She didn't wear a uniform or carry a weapon. She looked like a scholar, a historian. The coalition commanders exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to make of this. The woman spoke, her voice clear and measured. "You thought you understood combat. You only understood conflict within limits. We don't fight to win battles. We fight to never have to fight again." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The coalition fleet leaders were stunned, unable to comprehend the weight of what had just been said. They had always seen war as a game of strategy, of calculated moves and controlled victories. But the Black Star, humanity's weapon, wasn't about victory at all. It was about an end to conflict itself. The woman's words weren't just a statement. They were a revelation. Humans didn't fight for dominance, for control, or for glory. They fought for peace, and peace for them was achieved by making it so the enemy never dared challenge them again. It was a philosophy rooted in survival and finality, something that transcended the doctrines of the coalition. The Black Star didn't fight to win, it fought to end. And in doing so, it ensured that no war would ever rise from its ashes. As the fleet commanders struggled to process this new understanding, the Black Star did something it had done so many times before. It vanished. Without warning, it disappeared into hyperspace, leaving the fleet in stunned silence. There were no explosions, no dramatic showdowns, only a quiet departure that left the fleet commanders speechless. The Black Star was gone, but the impact of its presence remained, reverberating throughout the coalition's leadership. They had been shown something they could not ignore, a new way of thinking about war. A way that didn't fit within their carefully crafted doctrines. The realization hit them all at once. Humanity had redefined combat. It wasn't about following the rules of engagement or sticking to the limits of a battle plan. It was about survival, pure and simple. It was about ending conflict once and for all. The coalition fleet returned home, shaken and humbled by the encounter. In the days that followed, the alien leaders convened again, but this time, the atmosphere was different. They were no longer discussing tactics or strategies. They were discussing respect. The Black Star had shown them that war was not a game, nor was it something to be controlled. It was a brutal, messy thing, and humanity had understood it in a way the coalition never had. The galactic doctrine of war was rewritten, slowly and carefully, to reflect this new reality. The coalition had learned that the true power of humanity lay not in their weapons, but in their ability to adapt, to survive, and to make the impossible real. And from that day on, one new entry was added to every training manual across the galaxy. Avoid the Black Star, or think like a human. It was a small note, a simple warning, but it was enough. The galaxy had changed. The Black Star had shown them all that the future of combat was not about doctrine, not about calculated victory. It was about never needing to fight again.